Joining us now with more on Super Tuesday is Senator Rand Paul. Senator, thanks for joining us. How do you read what's going on now with the Democrats?
You know, I think that they are worried about Bernie. I think the stock market's worried about Bernie. I think the whole country's worried about socialism. And I think the Democrats are rattling the wagon. And you got to wonder, you know, what kind of payoff there is to all these people endorsing Biden all of a sudden. I think it was strange that somebody dropped out of the race who actually won one of the first three states. So I was kind of surprised to see Buttigieg come out of the race so quickly. But no, I think they are rallying their wagons, and I think there's a chance that Biden will end up being the nominee. It's a safer pick for the Democrats. I don't think he has what it takes when you talk about a one-on-one debate with President Trump. I think he'll fare very poorly. I don't think he has what it takes to stand up with the president.
Sir, I know that there's been obviously talk about Bloomberg out in California, and, you know, he appears to be somewhat moderate. Do you think he has a shot at all?
I think they're all very liberal. If you have Bernie, the socialist, they're all just maybe slightly more to the center than Bernie, but they all have very, very liberal positions that really don't mesh with, most of middle America. So no, I think their idea that we should redistribute the wealth, that we should raise taxes on corporations, that we should spend $60 trillion on things like the Green New Deal and things like free this and free that, including free health care for people who come into the country illegally. I think these ideas really are well out of the mainstream. And so I think what you'll find is when people discover that, oh, we're all going to get Medicare, but that means I have to give up my private health insurance, I think a lot of union workers aren't going to be happy with that. So no, I don't think their ideas, even the ones that aren't quite Bernie Sanders, I don't think any of their ideas jive very well with mainstream America.
We've seen the stock market down again today. It was up yesterday, but we've seen a lot of weakness there. So the Federal Reserve lowered interest rates, trying to make money available to those who need it. That doesn't necessarily solve all the problems. So there is some look now at Congress for maybe some kind of fiscal stimulus. Have you thought at all about that?
You know, I think there is nothing free in life, and if we want to give people a wheelbarrow full of money and say go out to the mall, that's not a great idea. People aren't going to the mall not because they lack money. They're not going to the mall because they're afraid of getting this coronavirus. So I think what's going to happen is the coronavirus is going to have to sort itself out over the next couple of weeks. I'm still very hopeful that it doesn't become this big widespread pandemic. And I think one positive thing is when you look at China's got like over 1 billion people. But so far, one province and about 80,000 people in that province got it. But, you know, if this were all of a sudden in Beijing and 1 million people had it in Beijing now, I'd be very alarmed for the world. But it doesn't seem to be doing that. So I think there has been some containment. I think we're striving hard to contain it here. But just printing up buckets of money and giving to people is a foolish notion whether there's worry or not.
Sir, I know that you're going to be meeting with the president today. You're going to be talking about the existing Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. It's something that you've been very vocal on. When are you meeting with him, and what do you hope to get out of that meeting?
You know, I'll be meeting with the president this afternoon. I've already spoken with him about my amendment. I don't think that a foreign intelligence court, a secret court, should investigate Americans, period. So I don't think they should have investigated President Trump's campaign, Carter Page, or any other American. And I think that's the reform we have to have. So I have an amendment that says the FISA Court, this secret court that is supposed to investigate and surveil foreigners, that just shouldn't be used on Americans. So people say, well, what if an American is associated with a foreign conspiracy? Get a regular warrant. There's no reason why we can't use the Constitution. Under the Constitution, you can get sealed warrants from courts, and they actually give them up pretty readily. So I think that we just need to get Americans out of the FISA court. I'm going to present that position very strongly to the president. He's already told me he's sympathetic to that position. He thinks the FISA court was used unfairly against an American, himself, an American, Carter Page, and his campaign. And I think we ought to try to make sure that that never happens again. That means we need to change the law.
Let's stay on investigations. Do you think that the Biden should be investigated by the Senate?
You know, I think I think most Americans look at that and say, gosh, here's this kid of a politician that just got kicked out of the military, making $1 million a year. Something smells, something doesn't look right here. And whether or not it's against the law, it's definitely a conflict of interest. I think if there were warnings to Biden at the time that he shouldn't have been doing it, I think that should be investigated. If he actually used his office for the personal benefit of his son, that should be investigated. So, yeah, there's a lot of things we don't yet know about this. And the mainstream media often will say, oh, No, it's been investigated. It's been investigated. None of this has ever been investigated. I would like to see one of our Senate committees look after it. There have been some promises made, but so far we really haven't had any serious looking into the Biden controversy.
Sir, I know you've been very adamant about getting troops out of Afghanistan, and then, the Taliban already breaking the truce before the ink is dry. Your thoughts on that?
I think we should declare victory and come home, regardless of what the Taliban do. We didn't go to war with the Taliban. We went to a war with the people who attacked us on 9/11 and some members of the Taliban once upon a time who harbored them. The people currently have really nothing to do. We've killed or captured anybody who had anything to do with 9/11. These people are involved in a civil war in their country. They're going to have to sort it out. We have given good people $1 trillion worth of weapons and arms and uniforms and salaries. It's time they fight for themselves. I'm not for sending any more young American men or women over there. The military's been saying there's no mission. The Afghan papers, they were admitting no mission for 10 years. There's no reason to send one more kid over there and no reason to have one more kid die. So I'm for coming home. I don't know if you can trust the Taliban, but either way, it's not in our national security interest to be there. It just is an enormous expenditure of money and also a waste of lives at this point.
Senator, a lot of folks are uncomfortable with what's going on with the coronavirus. They see it being played politically on Capitol Hill by some, and the average American just wants to be safe and know more. So how do you feel the government, and I'll say both sides of the aisle, are handling this, and what do you think should be done to address coronavirus?
I think the vice president's doing a good job. He's brought together a team of scientists to deal with this. I just came from the health committee where we had 4 scientists who were telling us about this. And I think one of the things that people should take to heart is that kids below 10, none of them are dying. We're also not even measuring that they get the disease. And I think that's not because they don't get the disease. I think that their symptoms are so mild, they're not even taking them to the doctor, because there's really never been a virus that doesn't affect everybody, that everybody doesn't get some symptoms of. The good news about that is we may be overrepresenting the mortality rate. So let's say there's 50,000 kids in China that just didn't get very sick but got the virus. That would be good news for the rest of us, that 1, kids aren't going to get sick in our country, but 2, that the overall mortality rate may be much less than is actually being broadcast. I'm still hopeful that this can be contained. I think there'll be more worry when we start to see any city in our country with thousands of cases. Right now we have a few dozen here and there. I don't think it's ready for, people need to be ready for alarm or be reading alarm into this. I think we need to be prepared. We need to watch the news and be reasonable. But I don't think there's any reason for hysteria right now.
We'll certainly keep our eye on it. Senator Rand Paul, thank you so much for joining us today on this Super Tuesday. We really appreciate it.
You just watched Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing news channel, now in 65 million homes. Get Newsmax TV on all the major cable systems or go to newsmaxtv.com and click on the Find Newsmax tab to locate us. Remember, Newsmax TV, we're real news for real people.